So, welcome everybody. Thank you for attending. Welcome to this meeting of the Economic Development and Skills Policy Committee. The meeting is open to the public and will be webcast, and the recording will also be available for people to view later via the Council's website. It's also possible that Sheffield Live TV will record and rebroadcast the meeting. We have today received no questions from members of the public. Please can I request that mobile telephones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. There is no fire test planned for today. If there is an emergency evacuation, please take instruction from the Town Hall staff. The assembly point is Tudor Square. Perhaps we can start with introductions. If we go around this way, Robert, starting with Robert.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. I'm an officer here today to support the committee. I'm the Assistant Director for Legal and Governance, Robert Parkin.
Hi, I'm Minesh Parrott. I'm the Deputy Chair of the committee.
I'm Sinead Meyer-Richards. I'm substituting for Abdul Qayyum today.
I'm Laura Moynihan.
I'm Peter Nottage, member for Hillsborough and group spokesperson for the Green Group. It's Councillor Brian Holmshaw. I'm a Green Party councillor for Broomhill and Sharrow Vale.
Barbara Masters, councillor for Ecclesall.
Curtis Crossland, councillor for Bayton.
Thank you. I'm Amanda Clayton from Democratic Services.
And I'm Martin Smith, councillor for Dore and Totley Ward and chair of this committee. I'll ask officers to introduce themselves when they come to present their items. Okay, as Sinead just said, we have apologies today from Councillor Kyle, and Sinead's standing in for him. There is no items that require exclusion of the public and press, which brings us on to declarations of interest. Do any members wish to declare an interest in any items on the agenda? No? Okay, thank you very much. So we go on to minutes of the previous meeting, which were held on 15th of March 2023 and 17th of May. Let's take them in turn. The 15th of March, are we happy with those minutes? Take that as yes. And 17th of May. I think that's also yes. Any matters arising? Minesh.
Thanks, Chair. I guess just 8.3 of the set of minutes from the 15th of March mentions the cross-party task and finish group for the employment and skills strategy. Do we have any timeframes for establishing that, or is that for future discussion in the work programme?
Thanks, Minesh. Yeah, that work and specification hasn't gone out yet. We're still working on that draft. We're waiting for the committee to be formulated again before we pull that task group together. Thanks.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you. We have no, as I said before, we have no questions or petitions, so which takes us swiftly on to item 7 on the agenda, which is the work programme. Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the work programme is there for noting. On page 22, you can see new and amended items. I believe there's quite a few items still to go on to the work programme. It's under development at the moment. And if anyone's got any questions, I'm sure Diana will be happy to answer.
Yeah, if I could just add to that. So the group spokespeople have had a discussion and we've suggested a few items to go on to the work programme. If it's okay, I don't intend to list them all now. But does any member wish to raise anything on the work programme? I've got Curtis and Laura. Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm kind of wanting the committee's advice on this a bit, to whether we should add it to the work programme or whether there's another way to pursue it. But people in my ward are really worried about the education and longer-term economic impact of the closure of the Sheffield College's Peaks campus. It's the only post-16 education facility in the area, and I worry it sends the wrong messages. But the consultation has been non-existent. They'd already decided that they were closing it when they opened the consultation. So this is a cross-committee issue, but relating specifically to this committee, I'd like to know if anybody is aware of any work that's looked into the longer-term economic impacts that this closure might have, how it might impact the career prospects of people in the southeast of Sheffield, and whether that work can be brought to this committee at some point.
Okay, thank you, Curtis. Before I answer that, Laura, was yours on the same subject or a different subject? Okay. Bike, I'll take you, is this on the same point? Just to answer one point that Curtis said, I was sitting next to Councillor Dale, who's chair of the Education Committee yesterday, and she agreed that this is something that cuts across both committees. So there's agreement there. I'll just, Brian, you wanted to talk on the same point?
Yes, it is about the college. So the closure will affect certain specialist functions within that college, which only exist within that college for the whole of Sheffield College. So, for example, it is by far the best centre for special educational needs within Sheffield College. The other sites are incredibly noisy and not very suitable for various needs within that. So how are we going to be able to deal with that? How is Sheffield College going to deal with that?
Thanks, Brian. For new members of the committee, we've had several discussions last year around what sits under which committee. And my understanding is that SEM provision, up to the age of 24, 25, sits with education for various legal reasons. Diana?
I was just going to note that the timescales for this next committee meeting is September, and the decision may be taken before that, so I'm not sure whether it's something that you could schedule within the committee meeting. However, I'm sure the college would be happy to provide a member's brief if that was requested for the committee members. I'm happy to help facilitate that if useful.
So Brian and Curtis, as you raised that, would you be content with a briefing?
Yes, I think I'd also like to hear if there's any work being done on the sort of longer term impacts of the closure, and not just, I worry that asking the college to give us a briefing is just going to give their side of it, when as a city we need to know what the right decision is for the city. So I don't know if there could be some more work done on that at some point.
Okay, thanks for that. I think if Brian.
Thank you, Martin. Given that SEM lies within the education remit, how are we going to engage with Education Committee?
Short answer is, I don't know. I heard about it a couple of minutes ago. I think if perhaps we, and Minesh, if you want to have a discussion with Diana about how to best take this forward.
Yeah, happy with that suggestion. I was also going to add to Curtis's point, future uses of the site should be considered if it is to close as well, and how we can ensure, I guess, more provision in future and more training skills to support the economy in that area with that site.
Diana?
Chair, I wondered if a joint letter from yourself and the head of the Education Committee to Angela might be a way of getting that started.
Yep, I think that's a good idea. I'll catch up with you after the meeting and see how we can take that forward. And I'll run it past you guys as well. Is that okay? So is there anything else on the work programme that anybody wants? Sorry, Laura, I forgot about you.
I don't know if this is the place to raise it, but I would really like an update on the city goals work. I'm particularly keen that we look at advanced manufacturing and other things, because we've got the lowest sorry, I've got a tickle in my throat. I made a note here somewhere. Yeah, with the UK's low pay capital, Sheffield, 27% of people earn less than the living wage. And I'm just aware that a lot of what's on the agenda today is around leisure, hospitality, which is often 0 hours contracts and low pay. I'd like us to be able to look at the bigger, the advanced manufacturing, high wage, high skills economy.
Good idea. I think, Diana, can that be worked into the programme at some point, do you think?
Yeah, certainly we can do a city goals update. We can do that via email to all of the committee members, but in September as well. And then I think a sectoral look, a bit of an economic overview. Happy to do that too.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to Peter next because you already had a go.
Just a quickie, Chair. I notice on the agenda is for future is local visitor economy partnerships. The fact that we don't seem to have any say in the evening economy, which has got to be one of the biggest attractions to the city centre, just seems to be odd to me. Do we have joint meetings with the people who have the say on the evening economy?
So there is certain groups, the nighttime economy kind of grouping of private sector people that work together, hospitality and other people that we do meet with on a regular basis as kind of marketing Sheffield to support them when they need it, particularly through COVID. And then there is obviously the bid that have a lot of communication and consultation with employers and with the hospitality industry through that as well. So
it's a massive attraction, the evening. People come all around the region to the city centre to enjoy the evening. It doesn't seem to be part of our discussion, that's all.
yeah, okay. Nighttime economy is an item in the future.
Yeah, good idea. I agree with that. Go on then.
Thanks, Martin. So meeting 2, we're having an update on the culture strategy, developing the culture strategy. I just wanted to check what member engagement might be factored into that, and could we have a policy workshop as members in between the meetings? That would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. The specification for that piece of work is just being finalised, so we can share that before it goes out. There'll be a stakeholder and community-led steering group that will oversee that, but as part of the consultation we will definitely do member workshops or invite you to other workshops.
You can tell we're all keen, can't you, Dan? So, are we all content with that item? I think the action is to note the work programme and the suggestions, and just thinking out loud, when we pull that together, perhaps Minesh and Henry, when we get together for one of our regulars, we could go through that in more detail. Is that okay? Fine, thank you. So that brings us on to item 8, which is the 2022-2023 financial outturn. And I think we've got, sorry, Jane. Jane's going to take us through that. I do apologise.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Jane, I'm Head of Accounting. So the purpose of the report today is to bring the committee up to date with the Council's General Fund outturn position for 22-23. The full report was taken to the Finance Committee on the 13th this week, and each policy committee receives a summary of the full version. So this is kind of a very summarised version of that. This report also complements our annual statement of accounts, which has been produced in line with statutory deadlines this year and has hit the 31st of May, which is a significant achievement. And the draft will be taken to the Audit and Standards Committee next Thursday. So the headlines on the year, in 22-23, the General Fund did overspend by 5 million against a net revenue budget of 450 million. And this meant an unplanned draw from reserves to meet that in-year deficit. In 21-22, we identified a 70 million General Fund reserve that we were able to draw on to manage the risks associated with the budget delivery. We used 20 million of that in 21-22 to cover the in-year deficit, and then we planned to use 15 million of that when we set the budget in 22-23. So really the draw from the reserve last year to cover that was another 20 million, which leaves us 30 million from that in that risk reserve pot as we move into 23-24 to manage the risk associated with delivering this year's budget. The closing position did improve significantly throughout the year. We started with a position of reporting over 20 million during the first part of the year, and that was managed down to 5 million through significant work with officers. The table on page 32 shows the improvement each month and also which committee budgets contributed towards the movement and the improvement. So in the Adult Social Care Committee, we saw a £6 million improvement, and that was mainly due to additional income that we received into the council. A lot of that was the winter discharge funding that was announced by government in the latter end of last year. Colleagues worked really closely with health to make sure that we were maximising our eligibility from that funding, which was why we were able to reduce the overspend in that area. In the Transport, Regeneration and Climate Committee, we reduced the overspend, well, we reduced the budget position by 2.5 million, and some of that was to do with an in-year mitigation of an unachievable savings plan that was put forward during the budget process. The Strategy and Resources Committee improved by 4.5 million throughout the year, and lots of that was due to unforeseen income. What I mean by that was the interest rates that we were able to achieve, well, the interest income that we were able to achieve on some of our investments was much better than planned because of the interest rates and how they fluctuated throughout the year. We set our treasury management strategy before the start of the Ukraine war, so obviously the interest rates spiked as a result of that, and we were able to sort of benefit from additional income because of our cash balances throughout the year. We also had additional income from the business rate levy surplus into that committee. So the main reasons for the overspends were really about the shortfalls in our budget delivery plans, and we were reporting 19.5 million were undelivered last year. So lots of mitigations were offsetting some of those challenges that we saw, particularly around inflation in 22-23. On page 33, I talk about the energy uplifts that we had to cover in year. So we saw over 100% increase in our energy prices, and the council had an additional 5 million to cover in energy bills as a result. So we drew down from provisions that we'd accounted for in previous periods to cover some of that risk. So the main committee overspends were 5.7 million in adults, and lots of that was due to the savings plans that were undelivered. We had a lot of expensive care packages put in place during COVID, and the timing of the reviews and sort of the recovery has kind of slipped into next year. In children's services, we've had issues in our residential services and also with transport and with placements as well. It is worth noting the housing revenue account was also overspent by 12 million, which represents a reduction to the capital programme. Largely due to a backlog in repairs. So we had significant costs in our housing repairs and maintenance budget last year, and also a loss of rent from vacant properties. So coming to the Economic Development and Skills Committee, in context it's quite a small revenue budget in context of the full council's revenue budget, and it landed at 400,000 under budget. And the majority of the underspends were due to staffing forecasts, and lots of that was due to the fact that we have lots of external funding in the committee, so where we're able to sort of lever additional funding to cover staffing in terms of other programmes that are going on. And that presents opportunity but also risk to due to the short-term nature of a lot of these grants and funding positions. So the upside, we only had one delivery plan in this committee, which was about the vacation of the Broad Street West accommodation. So whilst we did see an improvement overall for the council, which is good news, there is still significant delivery challenges ahead to deliver the 23-24 position with a now reduced reserves position to draw from. All committees and services need to continue to remain focused on their budgets into this year. So the next update the committee will receive will be in September with a budget monitoring report on the Q1 position for 23-24. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have on the overall position or the committee in general. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jane. And can I also, on behalf of the committee, thank officers that managed to deliver the EDA's bits of the council budget so well and slightly under budget. That's a really good achievement. So at that point, any questions? I've got.
Thank you, Martin. Jane, as a newcomer to the committee, I see a piece of information here that tells me that there is 14.2 million of income to support the services. Where on here can I see where the main sources of that are? Or are they elsewhere?
I think Diana might be able to better answer where the main sources of funding are in there. It's probably not detailed in a huge amount of detail in this report. It is quite a high-level summary report of the overall position, so it doesn't really get into the detail of the funding, but I'm sure Diana can give you a bit of an overview.
Just the first 2 or 3 largest sources, thanks.
No problem, yeah. These are external grants that we bring in. I'm right in thinking education and skills, they're not here today, but I think that's adult education budget that they're leveraging in terms of income there. In terms of economy, skills and culture, that's primarily been European funding, which is ending this year. So last year through committee, we were kind of looking at the changes. And on today's agenda, you've got a lot of shared prosperity fund items. So they are the kind of external grants that we're bringing in to support them. They're the 2 largest. Underneath that, we work tirelessly really to find external income to fund new projects. Some of that comes from the South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority, others are written into government and other funds. So happy to do a briefing next time in terms of some of those external funds if that's helpful.
Okay, if there are no more questions, the recommendation is to note the content of that. Are we all content? Take that as yes, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Jane. Members, I've just had the politest ticking off I've ever had in my life, because Amanda's just told me I've missed something that I should have done earlier on the agenda. Item 5, appointments to the urgency subcommittee. We need to formally ratify that we agree to appoint members to serve on the Economic Development and Skills Urgency Subcommittee, and that is Laura, who's a new member and wasn't on the list before. So, are we all content with that, particularly Laura? Everyone's got a choice. I think that's a yes. And thank you for being polite. That moves us on to item 9, Local Visitor Economy Partnership, the formal application to the fund. And we've got Diana, Emma and Wendy taking us through that. So who wants to go first?
I'll kick off and then the guys who've done the work can take any questions and go through any detail. So thanks, Chair, for accepting this report. This is an update from a report that we bought last year asking to submit an expression of interest to become an LVET, which is a Local Visitor Economy Partnership. That expression of interest was accepted. So this is our application for full accreditation to become a Local Visitor Economy Partnership area. The report will go through, I'll hand over to Wendy to talk a little bit about what the LVET will do and its role. I just wanted to note for you key kind of recommendations. When we spoke to you last time, we were thinking that the LVET would be a Sheffield geography instrument. On feedback from Visit Britain, they really want us to do that at the MCA level. So we will be accountable body for the LVET on behalf of South Yorkshire. All LVETs are going to be working at kind of Mayoral Combined Authority level geography. However, the expertise to kind of lead this work sits within Marketing Sheffield in South Yorkshire, and so we've been asked to take the lead on behalf of South Yorkshire. So just wanted to note that. I'll hand over to Wendy to say a little bit more about what's in the report, and then happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Diana. So the report, as we've previously explained, is as a result of the changing landscape and the response by government to the Dubois review, which was released last year. The benefits for the local visitor economy partnership and Sheffield being part of that network is in so much as if we don't participate, then we will have no seat at the table with our National Tourist Board. Sheffield's position and South Yorkshire's position as a leisure destination, as a business events and conferencing destination, as a place to visit, as a sporting event, will completely disappear. We've worked very hard over the last few years to gain Sheffield's increased reputation as a city breaks destination, both domestically and internationally, and we have not yet publicly released, because we need them in a format that is easy to understand, but have recently had a volume and value survey which indicates that our economic impact of the visitor economy is now matching 2019 levels. So we have regained some of the market share of our 19.1 million visitors and our 1.2 billion value to the local economy. The benefits of working with in partnership across the other local authorities and with Simca are that we can find commonalities that will help support businesses who are based in the visitor economy. We can work with Visit England to work with their growth hub and their skills development team. So we will look at additional training that is available and can be developed for our businesses, particularly with evidence working towards them to encourage more international visitors into their businesses, which will help with their marketing and in turn then helps with our own marketing and market reach. We will have influence with national strategy by being part of the partnership, and we will have opportunities to learn and understand and develop best practice working with our core cities, working with Visit England and the international team at Visit Britain. So the National Tourist Board is effectively split into two. Another very important factor, I think, is that because the funding to Visit England comes from DCMS, there are now discussions also underway with other DCMS funded agencies, Arts Council England as such, and such like that, they will better recognise grant applications that come from LVEP destinations than they would from independent sources or destinations which are not part of that network.
There's just a couple more points to add in the report, Chair, if that's okay. On page 45, there's a diagram that kind of illustrates what we mean when we're talking about an LVEP, so you can kind of visualise it. Essentially, it's a way of bringing the public and the private sector together across the 4 local authorities. So that diagram shows how each of the local authorities have private sector networks that they currently support. That will continue, but will bring members of those groups and key stakeholders together in an advisory board alongside joint meetings of kind of tourism staff within the local authorities. That will form the basis of this partnership, and that will feed into formal decisions into the MCA and also into this committee and other kind of formal decision makings across South Yorkshire. Just wanted to explain that. The report says that our intention was to submit this in July. That was our intention until last week when we were told to get it in by the 19th of June. So it will be Monday when we submit this. I've also noted in the report, we sent you a draft of it, but it's a PDF and it's only printed what's visual on screen. So we will circulate to you tonight the full link so you can scroll down and have a look at all the text if you need to. And it's been updated since circulated as well. We're working on it daily, so we'll make sure you see that. Then the final point for me was there is a criteria page on page 46, which explains some of the things that we're going to be looked at as we're being accredited. And I wanted to explain that we've circulated with this paper a draft destination management plan. We're not asking for a recommendation of that today. we had to kickstart this work pretty quickly because it was part of the accreditation process that they wanted to see this process was underway. So that's there for you to start to have a look at. We will do some formal consultation with you in the next couple of months and weeks, and then we'll look to formally kind of adopt this from September as committee report there. So just to let you know, that's what that document is. So any comments on that outside of the meeting, really welcome. Thank you.
Okay, just before I offer that out, there's some really, really impressive numbers in there, like the 1.4 billion. How are those calculated? Where does that data come from?
We use an industry standard model called STEAM, which is the Scarborough Tourism Economic Assessment Model. But it's used by a number of destinations and recognised at a national level as being a kind of an industry tool. There's the STEAM and Cambridge models, but it's gathered by data from city centre footfall, from visitor numbers, from hotels, from attractions, from various kind of audiences that come into the city, and they apply a formula that extracts some of the local audiences from that and gives us a value that comes out, yes, in our favour.
I think 1.4 billion is definitely in our favour. So I'll open it out to colleagues. I've got, we'll go Sinead, Barbara, Henry, Minesh.
I'm not tall enough. One question. I actually had a Twitter correspondence yesterday with somebody called Heritage Project, who's it's because Time Walk Project, and I know that she's very keen on heritage and Sheffield, and I can't remember her real name, which is why I'm having to say Time Walk Project. And something she was saying was, as Sheffield, we still don't have, and we used to have, a visitor point where somebody who's coming to Sheffield can find somewhere and then find all the exciting leaflets which are all about come to Manor Lodge and see where Mary Queen of Scots was imprisoned, as opposed to other minor things in Sheffield that might happen. And also, when you come to the railway station and indeed some other places, the leaflets that are available there are all about great places in other parts of Yorkshire, rather than the great places you'd want people to visit within Sheffield. So is there going to be a place where people will come and say, I want to find out all the information about Sheffield and I want to be able to book somewhere to stay while I'm here, which we, as a huge city, are really, really lacking?
I'll ask Wendy to come in on kind of the leaflet point. A lot of our information will be in other cities and other areas, but I'll let Wendy talk that through in a bit of detail. And in terms of kind of the visitor point, there's very few of these left across the country now. They're very expensive to run, and so a lot of things now are online. So we have just upgraded our Welcome to Sheffield website. It's got an awful lot of detail on there now about the visitor economy. We do a lot of proactive work through that as well. So we're primarily online, and we do have an inbox to kind of help people as well. But I'll let Wendy talk about the leaflets as well. Please feel free on that as well, Wendy.
Thank you. I'll do this in two stages. Visitor information services, as Diana has said, are very expensive to operate, and core city, well, most of the larger cities now are reducing, if not closing, their infrastructure to deliver that service. The information points at the railway station are actually commercially run points. So the company Amco, as was, that operates them, are effectively just a distribution agency for attractions who wish to place their leaflets in those spaces. We have moved away from printed materials, and actually the attractions around Sheffield since COVID have moved away from kind of the large volumes of printed leaflets that are needed. So the minimum distribution, for instance, is 30,000 leaflets to be able to put those into that company's distribution racks. We have within our kind of budget for this next year costed for an update of a city centre map that we published, that we printed previously, which was distributed from hotel foyers, from the library, and from the town hall reception point when it was operational. The changes around the city centre are kind of delaying us being able to update that in any sense that will last kind of for a decent print run, but that is something we'll do. So that will be available, and it will have major attractions listed on it, major properties and major routes through the city. But we have very much moved away from printed material, and that is the way forward. Our online statistics are going through the roof, which is great to know that people who are planning to come to Sheffield are forward planning. There is a very small percentage of enquiries that come through our service that actually request printed material, certainly in advance. I do understand the kind of time works opinion on this. We have talked to them at length, and we did talk to them at length when we took the decision 5 years ago to close the Visitor Information Centre in Sheffield.
Can I just add something? It's probably worth saying that actually we work really closely with a lot of the hotels and visitor attractions, and we work really hard to make sure that the people who are in those facilities have details of what's going on, because obviously they're the frontline people that see our visitors all the time. So whilst there isn't that information point that people necessarily recognise as a visitor information centre, we're making sure that all of the people who have face-to-face communications with visitors have the necessary information so that they can be telling them the right things. So it's kind of just a slightly different way, isn't it, of communicating the things that are going on. So we do work with the sector to try and do that. And one of the things about the LVET will allow us to do that even more tightly and a bit wider spread. So,
if I can come back, I recognise that being the owner of a young person who lives on the phone and would never dream of having anything that was printed, I'm not quite as agile as he is, and certainly there are things like being able to go and talk to somebody, ask them about things, which does make a difference. And last year we had tourists here clearly for the football, and I sort of got stopped in the street, asked, where is there a tourist place where I can find out things? And I had to say, there isn't one. And there did feel like there ought to be something. So I don't know whether at times, when we're expecting large influxes of people, we can have something temporary, either at the Winter Gardens or indeed downstairs in the town hall in what used to be the reception area, that there shouldn't be somebody there who can do support and help, because not everybody is good at being online, and also getting online and then finding what you actually want isn't always easy if you're, I'm going to say, over 60. I think that's a safe age I can use there. And also just having something visible that shouts, we're really proud of our city, have a look at some of the stuff that we've got, is just useful for people who just happen to be in the city and don't know that up at Manor there's some amazingly good things to go and see, and then you can follow it up with Bishop's House or such things. That's not in our ward, is it? We don't care about Bishop's House, no. But, you know, seriously, or even going out to Spittal Hill and just seeing all the amazing different restaurants that are there. And that might just be somebody saying, go and try it, rather than just having to look online and hope it sells itself, if you like.
I'll just add that on certain events we do have the city centre ambassadors that we wrap around events like that we do use them for some of that work, but it's a good idea to have kind of a bit of a pop-up where we've got big events and lots of visitors, we know that they're coming. That's something we'll look into. I think it's a good idea to have a little pop-up area that we could look into doing that. the website has been seriously updated. There's brilliant pages on there around food and drink and social media. I get that not everybody is online, and we do have kind of networks in the city, as Emma was describing, but having that service that somebody can pick the phone up to or pop into, it's just not economically viable to be run by the council at the moment. And we do know that the majority of visitors do look online and do look to plan and book in advance. So it is a very small amount of people that we're not servicing through that.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got Barbara next, and then it will be Henry.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, just leading on from that, has any thought been given to using the digital display boards in the city just to sort of have images, you know, sort of on a continuous loop about all the different attractions in Sheffield? Because I've often thought we're wasting that opportunity. If you're walking along Fargate and you suddenly see a picture of Bishop's House or other things, you know, sort of it's going to... and Banner Lodge, you know, sort of... and also, if you're talking about hotels, you can have, I mean, I've seen them sort of in little screens with a continuous loop about attractions in the area. And that gets away from your leaflet, but it's very visual, very colourful, and grabs the attention. But that wasn't my question, it was just a comment following on from that, which basically sort of, I mean, I've looked at the bid, the actual document, and you're working on it still, but because, I mean, sort of so often we hear that sort of the funding has failed for some reason. So, and as an ordinary layperson, there's a few things that sort of struck me as sort of, well, I wouldn't say questionable, but worried me. So I'd really sort of, I think it's brilliant going for it. I want to succeed. So can you sort of reassure me on these points? So it's in this, and the first one is at page 9. You know, sort of, B3 asks to indicate, you know, what you're currently engaged in, and guess what sort of visitor information is mentioned there, but there's also tourism awards, travel, visitor information, management, transport planning, public realm, visitor economy. You've got blanks against there, and I was always taught that you don't have blanks against a form. So do you anticipate the lack of activity being an issue, and how can it be addressed?
That's all filled in now.
Oh, good.
It was just some of that is a PDF issue because the form is a nightmare, and some of it is a drafted issue.
No, that's what I want to hear.
Everything's either filled in with a yes or no now, and all of those at the bottom are obviously public sector, local authority functions, and so they are a yes.
I mean, I did scroll down where I could, but that was just a form. You know.
Yeah.
B8 is a similar sort of thing. You've got future high street funds mentioned in there. We know that's been a little bit problematic, and I mean, sort of, do you anticipate this being an issue, and how can it be addressed?
I won't comment on Future High Streets Fund. This table is just trying to give an indication that we are used to handling large sums of money, even though I'll just say the LVEP doesn't give us any money at this point. It will in the future, we're hoping.
Right, okay.
So it's just assessing our ability to handle those things. So that was just an example.
Right,
is that one still in, Wendy, or we updated it? Yeah, we've updated that.
But as I say, basically, sort of, there have been issues with that, so I was just wondering
I think we've put the Welcome Back Fund in now, which delivered Summer in the Outdoor City.
Right. C4, page 14. Sort of, the response focuses on what future activities LVEP will support. You know, there's a statement Sheffield is currently working to create her own global destination sustainability index, but what else is being done now? Because it seems to read as if it's what you would do with the money when you get it, as opposed to what you're doing to support your bid for the money.
We've updated that one as well now. So we talk now there about how what we're doing now is organised to deliver the strategic economic plan, that each of the 4 local authority areas have processes like climate impact assessments, for example, to make assessments of these types of things as we go on. So there's much more in terms of the strategic fit and the action that we're doing already. Actually, the Global Destinations Sustainable Index is something that's happening now. And we've got some examples of where we have integrated some of those principles into the decisions that we were making. So, for example, the Summer in the Outdoor City programme that we did, the climate impact assessment of that looked at not using plastics, travel implications, and tried to build those in. So we've built that out a little bit more, Barbara, so I'll send you the new version of that.
The last one that struck me, C5, it does say diversity and inclusion, and we know that's a huge issue, not just sort of here. So the response doesn't suggest that element has been addressed. But having said that, you see, you've got so much in the actual, you know, in the report here. And I'm thinking, why hasn't it been transferred onto the bid? So again, reassurances, please. It has been sort of addressed now.
Yeah, it has been addressed, but again, this PDF is just a little bit of a window. We need to tell them about 10% of what we're doing to try and get through the accreditation process. We'll share with them the draft DMP as well, which we'll build into. So I don't think they want at this stage to include all the information that's in the management plan into that, but we need to make sure we're getting the hooks in. So hopefully we've done that in the new draft, Barbara. But can I just say, thank you for reading it.
I'm not so sure that's a good thing to thank me for, but okay, thank you.
Speaking as a colleague of Barbara's, I can confirm she does like detail, which is a good thing. We've got Henry next, and then it'll be Minesh.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you very much for all the work that's gone into the LVAP application and also the destination management plan underpins it. Reading through it, I noted that Hillsborough is identified as one of the areas of Sheffield, and quite rightly so, that we'd be promoting to visitors, and there are numerous mentions of tram lines. There is a very strong local concern, especially following the Arctic Monkeys concert running basically into the back of tram lines, that the council is marketing Hillsborough Park as a rentable space to music event promoters rather than the high quality green flag park that it is. Can we seek any assurances that as we continue to promote it in the future under the LVEP, that it will be marketed as a park destination and not directly to promoters as a rentable space?
Thanks for that, Henry. I think I'd need to seek some further assurances from both Richard Eyre and Parks in terms of that. I'm not aware at all that that's the way it's being marketed. Certainly the conversations that we have with Hillsborough are with Hillsborough Together. They're talking about the whole area as a destination. We've been working with them closely through the Economic Recovery Fund, the shops that they have in the area, as well as using the green space. So certainly in the LVEP and in the Destination Management Plan, that won't be the focus. I can reassure you of that.
That's very good to hear, and thanks again for your work with Hillsborough Together. It's been very successful in the area, so thanks.
Thank you. We've got Minesh next, and then it'll be Curtis.
Thanks, Chair. And yeah, to echo everyone else, thank you for your work on this. I think Sean had said something about us being proud of our city, and, you know, echoing Sean talking about Manor and Henry talking about Hillsborough, I was really pleased to see Crooks mentioned as a distinctive neighbourhood in the Destination Management Plan, which is a fantastic and lovely place to be and represent. But this is exciting. Taking the step back, this is really exciting. You know, we've got the high level figure of the £1.4 billion tourism brings, but I know everyone in this room knows that we love our city, we love talking about our city, we love marketing our city. It is a great place to be. We know why it's a great draw for tourists, we know why it's a great draw for culture, it's got plentiful green places. I think the more we can do to show it off to people across the country and across the world, the better. You know, taking the step back, the LVEP application is really exciting. I think the change from the last time it came to the committee to this time, that it's going to be on behalf of South Yorkshire, I think that makes complete sense, both from we can advertise all 4 destinations with their own strengths individually, but also collectively. That's really positive. I think often with government pots, government funding, it seems competitive. It's about how can we try and outsell ourselves compared to Manchester Release, but we know we need a supportive ecosystem where, you know, we can join up culture bids, we can join up our tourism offer, we can showcase the North as a hub of cultural activity, as a destination. I think, you know, pooling our strengths with Barnsley, Rotherham and Doncaster, great, it's fantastic to see. I wanted to just touch on something from the Destination Management Plan. I know, not to oversell the exciting thing, the UNESCO City of Music data suggestion is exciting. I wanted to ask about the suggestion of a purpose-built conference centre. Do we have any data on, you know, what requests are coming in from the private sector for the need for that, or the boutique hotel? Where is that information coming from? Can we see maybe a briefing document of where needs are coming from the private sector versus where it's self-identified needs?
Yeah. Thanks for all those comments, Manesh. Just on that specifically, I will just say that this is an early draft of the management plan. It's come from a number of consultations we've done in the city, so everything in there is through engagement, but it does need refining, so things that are in there might drop out. However, on those 2 points, on the UNESCO City of Music, we really want to talk to people about that and see if it's something they want to take forward. On the conference centre, we are and have commissioned a study into what our current kind of conference and facilities are doing and if there's demand in the market to have more than that. That's a confidential report at the moment, but we will work to share it with the committee as soon as possible, but it will give a really good audit of what we've got in the city and where the gaps are. So that work is underway, yes, and we'll bring it to the committee as soon as we commercially can.
That's fantastic. I realised I should have had another quick shoehorn of UNESCO City of Music, Def Leppard coming back to Sheffield and also having the plaque at the Quirks Working Men's Club, but my brain's not thinking fast enough. But yeah, fantastic piece of work. And
Monkeys.
the Monkeys, Joe Cocker, another Quirks music icon. But yeah, no, thank you, and any data will be helpful.
Thanks for that. So I've got Curtis, then Laura, then Brian.
Thank you, Chair. And firstly, I'd like to echo all the comments that people have made about all the hard work that's gone into this, especially considering like the goalpost moved. Like you had to get this a month earlier than you thought you did. But I kind of wanted to follow up on what Sinead was saying, because I think the website is great and a necessity, but I don't know if I still class as young at 32, but I'd like to think as myself as a I'd like to think of myself as quite technologically savvy, if I can talk. And I went away after the election, as any sensible person would, to North Yorkshire to an Airbnb. And the first thing I saw when I opened the door was a bunch of leaflets on the table. And that's what I looked through to decide what we were doing that weekend. So I think the work that's been done on the website is really important, but I do worry that we're missing a trick. And maybe it's a change of how accommodation has changed pre-COVID and post-COVID, because, you know, Airbnb, I think, is probably used far more, and that means that there's lots of different stakeholders rather than a few big hotel chains. But I just think it's probably something that we need to keep an eye on and adapt and change if we need to.
Thanks, Curtis. And I will just note the work that Wendy has done on this. She's worked really hard, and it did really increase the workload to go to a South Yorkshire kind of LVEP, and she's the work that she's done and the connections she's got across South Yorkshire are excellent, so thank you, Wendy. And then in terms of kind of this point, I think actually the LVEP might give us a better opportunity to do this, because the whole point of it as well is to bring in the private sector and look at different income and commercialisation models. And actually it's the attractions themselves that often are printing those leaflets and circulate them rather than the city. So I think by bringing attractions together and the private sector, if they agree and want to do more of that activity, the budget might be aligned to do that. So certainly not saying it's something that we can't do as a city. I think it's something that's difficult to do within the council budgets at the moment. But actually that's why this is so important, because it might change the levers of that going forward. We know that kind of Liverpool and Manchester looked at accommodation bids and tourism bids. That's a way of really creating a healthy budget for the visitor economy. We are going to look and do some modelling around that. Maybe on the back of the LVEP, models like that might be something we could look at in Sheffield. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura.
2 points. I'm going to creep to you again and say it's a brilliant piece of work and very detailed. 2 points. A, are we involving the universities in particular to attract funding? Good, because they're big beneficiaries of Sheffield's as a destination management. And the other thing was itineraries. When I go on a city break, I buy the rough guide or whatever, and the first thing I look at is 48 hours in a city, 4 days in a city, and that plans it out for me. And I think something like that, either online or at hotels, would be brilliant. Thank you.
I'm just going to ask Emma to talk about the university campaign, and then Wendy, do you want to touch on the Discover England Fund and how we did loads of itinerary testing through that? Thanks.
Thanks, Di. Yes, as the understanding with the universities there, we work in partnership with them on possibly every single project we do. So you may have seen recently that we worked across both universities on a student recruitment campaign. So attracting 16 to 18-year-olds to consider Sheffield as a realistic proposition for their university years. And that was quite a significant campaign because universities normally promote themselves independently, and it's the first time that they'd worked with a city destination. So we kind of pooled investment on that and were able to do a Sheffield-led campaign which had TV advertising. And we also collectively went to exhibitions like the UCAS exhibitions and stuff, and the results that we've had from particularly the social media campaign because of the age group is phenomenal, and it's broken quite a few records. So it is something now that has been shortlisted for a Heist Award, which is one of the kind of prestigious university activity awards. So that's at a very high level. We are working with them really, really closely, but we work with the universities on all of these things. We work with them around conferences. So my team work with the universities to bid for international and national conferences coming in, and they are a really, really strong partner, both from a financial contribution, but also from just a partnership and support contribution. So yeah, we have a really, really close relationship with them.
Thanks. And just picking up on itineraries, I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree. And we've tested this over a period of time, but most recently I've spent a day in Leeds speaking to 30 individual travel writers, content creators of varying age groups and with various interests, and run past them some itinerary ideas, and they agreed equally that it would be really great to have those published. We worked on a campaign through a Discover England fund, so again funding from the National Tourist Board around itinerary building for audiences, markets in Netherlands and Germany, and using the outdoor city and the outdoor space, and married in with the cultural opportunities of the city. We had lots of itineraries developed for that for media. We now need to start working those up into kind of published itineraries again on the website, sharing them with hotels, sharing with them with the 1,000 or so properties that pop up in an Airbnb search with a Sheffield postcode, and making sure those are available and useful, and in a format that we can change as the city changes, and targeted, written in a way that different audiences will enjoy and pick their own best ideas out of those ideas. But absolutely, that 48 hours city break idea is that next development plan for us.
Thank you. And then finally, I have Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work. We've all said that, I think, now. Two items I wanted to pick up on. One was in connection with, you mentioned the Arts Council, but also hope that you're also going to be working with the Heritage Lottery Fund, with Historic England, and with other bodies, regional and national. So I'm not expecting this to sit within here, but where does that sit, and who is talking to them? If you could let me know, either now or later, that would be really handy. I'd like to know that. Secondly, also on heritage, is who are you talking to strategically locally as well? So I notice on page 66 we got, I think I can only spot one mention of heritage in the document, which is heritage development, which mentions new collections at Kelham Island and other further enhancements, which is fine, but there's Joined Up Heritage Sheffield, and there's the local heritage open days, which is really significant nationally. So are they included? And again, it doesn't necessarily have to come out within this directly, but I'd like to be reassured that you are speaking to those and developing those.
I'm happy to take those questions now because it's work I'm actively doing. So I meet with the Arts Council and Heritage Lottery Fund now on a monthly basis to keep them updated around what we're doing in the city, hear their concerns, promote projects that are going forward for their funding, and really help that relationship develop. In terms of culture, this committee has commissioned a new culture strategy from the city, and that's going to be published. And I'm sure you know about the motion on heritage that went to, I think it was full council, it might have been SNR. So I've met with Heritage Partnership Board on the back of that motion, and we're looking at the joined up heritage strategy and where the council needs to be playing a stronger role in supporting the delivery of that strategy. We're looking to go back to SNR on the back of that motion in September. So all of those connections and that work are now underway. I'm kind of a gateway for them, but there are a lot of other people in the council, particularly on heritage within the rest of City Futures around planning particularly, that need to kind of build and support that interface. We absolutely recognise the kind of symbiotic relationship between heritage and culture, and then how important that is for the visitor economy. So hopefully that offers some reassurance.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Diana.
And finally, Sinead just wants to come back in.
No, completely different. It's just to show how modern and hip I am now. It was about the National Video Game Museum, and we also know that video games are such a huge part now of our economy in Sheffield, one that I think is pretty hidden. And again, it's somebody on Twitter, Mark Hardesty, has been badgering me about this as well. So I think a whole younger generation of people under 60 would find that really interesting. But the other question was, what are we going to do with the other authorities? If it's a South Yorkshire bid, are we going to say things like, come to Sheffield to do X, but while you're here, you might want to pop over to Rotherham to do Y, and things like that?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's exactly the idea. So this is a Sheffield destination management plan, but we've commissioned, going to commission a South Yorkshire destination management plan. I think that will help kind of pull out the strengths of different areas, because visitors don't really stay within a local authority area, particularly, we know with the Peak Districts on our doorstep as well, so that will come into that as well. So yeah, the work that we'll do through the South Yorkshire destination management plan will help us make those connections when we're doing kind of local sales piece, but also have some South Yorkshire kind of narrative and literature around this, hopefully. Is there anything you want to add to that?
It's also about, because we naturally think of kind of marketing, don't we? We think about kind of like, well, we're talking about Sheffield and then where else can people go? But from destination management is also about the skills in the businesses. So upskilling the businesses to make sure that they're making the most of the opportunities that are available to them. Wendy's done some stuff with Visit Britain already about people who want to, you know, kind of get involved in international markets. So it's a lot around synergies around business support, and all of the stuff that goes behind the product. You know, you talk about kind of nighttime economy, upskilling those guys so that they can kind of get into working with us. So it's not always about that kind of front customer facing stuff. It's about kind of getting the back end sorted and making sure that those businesses feel like they can be part of the visitor economy. They can understand what the visitor economy is. You know, it's not just about leisure visitors, it's about conference delegates and other people that are coming into the city, and also that they can easily take advantage of those people and make their businesses as successful as possible with all of those people that are coming in. Am I making sense? Yeah.
And finally, we have Peter, and after that
I couldn't not get involved, could I?
Save the best till
Just again to congratulate the officer, I think it's a great report. Just one little comment, there's not a lot of mention of sport and its attractions in this city. And I just think that, you know, we have 30,000 people at Ramalays, probably 30,000 Hillsborough every week that'll happen. The ice hockey, of 7,000 people coming, and many of them from outside the city. The swimming events is almost every month. There's a national, international, and sometimes event in it, and we don't seem to market that as well as we ought to, I think. And it's obviously the outdoor case as well, and the rock climbing, the indoor. There's such a tremendous spread across. I think it's fairly unique, you know, particularly. And then we've got the Olympic legacy part, which is another big attraction, and the all new thing that's coming on the scene. And I thought perhaps we ought to maximise and have a look where we can maximise the stay. It's okay, I'm going to Hillsborough to what, but if you can get them to stay overnight and have some event, it's a big input into the city's economy. That's all. Anyway, that's my say, Chair.
Great comments, thank you, Peter, and we will seek to turn that up a little bit in the next draft because we totally agree with you, particularly on sporting events. It is a real niche, and actually going into para events as well in terms of sport. It's a real something that we're kind of developing as the city, so we will look to do that. Just to say, underneath the destination management plan, we will be looking at a proper event strategy for the city as well, which will come to this committee in due course.
So thank you, colleagues. I'm going to draw that item to a close. Everyone's had a chance to speak. We have a number of recommendations in front of us. I'll just read them out for everyone else's benefit. We're being asked to agree, point 1, that Marketing Sheffield leads on the submission of an LVET application to visit England. 2, for Sheffield City Council to be established as the accountable body on behalf of South Yorkshire in delivering the requirements. Point 3, to note the need to establish an operational structure which supports the delivery of the LVET and seeks the MCA financial resources as a mechanism for creating the required structure. And finally, to note the development of Sheffield's draft destination management plan, which is required as part of the accreditation process. So, colleagues, are we all agreed on that? If anybody dissents, stick your hand up. In that case, that is carried unanimously, and thank you very much for a really interesting report and great answers. Thank you. Let's crack on. So, welcome, Ruth. And colleagues, we have the next item, which is the terms of reference for the Sheffield Diverse Advisory Business Board. And for this, we have Diana again and Ruth McDonald. So, over to you guys.
Yvonne Asquith, who's the head of Business Sheffield in my team, was due to present this report, but she's been held up. Last year, that was looking at our actions around the Race Equality Commission and looking at particularly at the business recommendations and how we took those forward. At that point, we recommended that we set up this new board. You asked us to go away and work up the terms of reference, work with BAME-led businesses to try and populate that membership and what it would look like, what it would do, and come back with you with a recommendation. So that's what this report does. The report asks for your agreement to formulate this board now and agree the terms of reference of that board, feeding into this committee for any decisions. And also to note that in doing that, we will be closing the business response group, which was a dedicated group of businesses that supported us through the COVID pandemic. So just to offer thanks for them for all the work they did over that period. The report goes into the background and some of the actions that are asked for us on the back of the REC Commission. It also talks about how we've identified members, and I'll let Ruth talk about that in a little bit more detail. Just to clarify on the discussion we had last time, this is an advisory board, not a decision-making board. It will work to this committee. Any actions or decisions that are taken will come through the formal process here. I'm just going to hand over to Ruth, if that's all right, to talk a little bit about the work that she's been doing in the community to try and make sure that this board looks and feels different to advisory boards we've had in the past.
Thank you. As you are aware, when we actually approached the board in November, we've managed to do quite a lot of work since, engaging with the community. We've run a number of events, which I mentioned before, in the event central, where we'd actually called to the community engaged with community artists and not artists who've done over 113 art art pieces of work, which are now going to be shown in the interchange. As I'd mentioned then, from them what we'd actually done, we'd actually worked with the Business Sheffield, where the business advisors had actually worked with those from the diverse community who I'd actually managed to introduce them to. We'd also managed to link with the banks. We've been meeting with the banks quite regularly. That's Lloyds, NatWest, where we've actually managed to agree a Sheffield, an ethnic minority Sheffield roadshow. We've got Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds all have a diverse business roadshow every year. The banks have actually agreed to support that and sponsor that. We're also working in partnership with YABA, which is the Yorkshire Asian Business
Association.
Association. Sorry. Again, we're also working in partner with YABA, who are going to actually support some of the work that we're actually currently doing in Sheffield. As we know, as a Race Equality Commission, the Race Equality Commission actually identified that we need to be working with the community, the diverse community, bringing more diversity on board. That's what we've actually managed to do. When you actually look at the committee that we've now managed to bring together, we've identified a number of people from the community who will actually help in some of the decision makings and driving this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Great. So before I bring other people in, many thanks for coming. I just want to give also a shout out for the Economic Recovery Fund. So last year I went to a number of the events that was organised through that, and again the diversity that was coming through there and just the insight was just fantastic. So there's clearly a link there that we need to exploit. So we'll go with, was it Laura first and then Milish?
Will there be a social enterprise represented on the board? It's not in the terms of reference specifically.
Yes, there is.
Okay, and will there be a balance of men and women from BAME communities on there as well?
Yes, we currently the startup team, business team, are actually already running a number of networks in the community, which is absolutely, it's going really, really well.
Good. And no, I'll leave it there. I'll finish speak.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all of your work with this. I know we've seen a report on this already come last year. It's very positive. We all know why this is necessary. I made the point last time. If we can look around the room and see why the council and committees need to listen to a more representative and diverse base of information. We all know the reasons for commissioning the Race Equality Commission. There is a lot of work the council needs to do and the city needs to do to grow and become an anti-racist place. I wanted to ask a question about the terms of reference. Obviously, there is a large emphasis on the role of the board to be representative of the business base, but also on advocating for the city's private sector. There's less specific about how the board will seek views on how the council can better support BAME businesses and BAME enterprise, or how it can better support and empower people to BAME people to thrive economically and not just be a sounding board on our policies. But I think, you know, I wonder if there's something we should add formally to the terms of reference about formalising that critical friend process. What do we need to do? What do we need to do to change how things are done? I think it's not just about growing economically, it's also about changing the makeup of business in the city. And I worry sometimes the focus on representation as representation in itself can put people in a room, can give people a seat at the table, and not look at, you know, how we could get more people in that place. So it's great to have a board that represents diverse businesses in the city. How can we ensure there are more diverse businesses? And I think something reflecting that in the terms of reference might be welcome.
Thanks, finish, we can absolutely do that. In section 2, we've tried to kind of capture what the board will do in terms of representation. We will use them to develop our business support, but we can specifically draw out of that, I think, for BAME and SME businesses, because a lot of what we design is designed for kind of medium-sized, like larger ones. So, and just reflect that a little bit more in the terms of reference. Happy to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that'll be helpful. It's one of those things I thought when I was looking for it. How can we ensure formally and as clear as possible in the wording, we want to see more BAME businesses? That should be a priority specified. We know it is in reality, but let's put it in writing as well.
Okay, got Henry next.
Well, thanks again for all of your work on this. A few questions. How many businesses have we engaged in total on the Inclusive Business Board? And are there any of our diverse communities in Sheffield that aren't represented on it at the moment? Because within the umbrella of BAME businesses, there's a lot of variation and diversity within that group. And are there any particular communities that we're not representing at the moment? And then if so, how are we sort of proactively going out and engaging with those?
As you know, Sheffield has, I think it's 125 different languages, something like that. And when we've actually been engaging with the communities, every community is actually in touch with another community. The events that have basically been taking place, again, we've used the ISREC Centre. So what we've tried to do, we've actually tried to do the events across the city. So where we've actually gone for the ISREC Centre, which is that the east, the west, we've also looked at the north. So we've got another event again taking place in the north. So what we've tried to do is ensure that we are reaching as far as possible. One of our business consultants is also another part of the business Sheffield is actually the food. So they're also engaging and speaking to the food businesses. And again, like you mentioned, Pitsmore, we've had a number of catering businesses that have opened up. So every time we actually are engaging with these different businesses, we're also bringing them into the makeup by asking and offering if they actually need additional support. To back up some of the work that we are also doing as well, working closely with the banks, the events that we're actually going to take place in Sheffield will actually have the banks, the funders, and also the business supports who will also attend the events, which will then be able to create a wraparound service for the businesses and those who are actually needing business support. I'm not sure if you're actually aware, but NatWest have recently done a piece of research with Birmingham University, which is Time for Change. Within that report, that also identifies 10 recommendations. These recommendations actually work alongside the recommendations that has actually come out of the Race Quality Commission. We've also got the Rose review, which was done in 2019, basically looking at the amount of women in business. And all, again, what it actually does, what a lot of these reports do, is actually give quite clear recommendations in how we can actually start to build and drive the economy forward in Sheffield, and linking with other cities as well, who are doing really, really well. So.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. I'll just add to that I don't think this is going to be perfect first time. We're open to iterating this membership. We've put in the report that we might need to do some open recruitment to fill any gaps that we kind of see in the board as the membership comes together. I will just say that we're looking to try and get more than 50% of the membership of that board to be from BAME-led businesses. So it'll look really different to anything that we've had before. I'll do a check in terms of our different communities represented. I think we're going to talk to the Chinese business community as well and try and get them integrated into the board as well. But I think it's something that we need to be continually checking on and moving forward. I don't think we'll ever be able to be totally representative of every sector, every ethnicity and every size of business. because we'd end up with a huge board, but we just want to start on that journey doing things a lot differently. So please keep holding us to account on that, and we'll share the membership as well so you can see that. And if you've got any other ideas, please do let us know.
Brian?
Thank you again, Martin. So I'm chairing the Central LAC, and we are going to have a Racial Equality Commission focused public meeting in October the 13th, to which I just made an invitation if you'd like to come along and do a presentation. So that might help with spreading the word, with getting a diverse business community involved. It'll be at the ISREC Centre as well, so you'll know that one. So there's the invitation, 6 p.m, October the 13th. The second thing I wanted to mention was I just picked up within the format of the meetings. Great idea to spread them around the city, I think, to try and pick up on wherever it might be across the city. But 4 to 6 p.m, is that going to be the best time? Now I'm thinking in particular just for businesses with family responsibilities. 4 till 6 doesn't work for that. So, but just a thought.
Yeah, what we've tried to do again is look at the different times, obviously, because for women we've got children at school. You know, for the men it may be better after work. So we are quite flexible when we are actually doing our events.
Businesses tend to tell us early morning or after the working day. So we'll, again, iterate that. If that's not right for the membership and they want to change the time, that's entirely flexible.
It's great. I just thought it seemed a bit fixed. Laura?
Just a thought. I'm glad this is independent of the council, but I just wondered if councillors could be invited as observers, because we've got to take that cultural shift back into the council, and particularly within this committee. So I just wondered if that could be added to the terms of reference.
Yeah, I'm open to that. I think maybe at the first meeting we can ask the membership if they're comfortable with that, and then make that recommendation if they are. If not, I would really like to invite them to a committee as well once we're established. But
as long as they know that we're 100% behind this, we want to see that culture shift, and any pressure we can put on to financial institutions, etc., would be helpful for them.
Brilliant, thank you, Laura. We'll make sure that's on the first agenda item.
Yeah, and at a personal level, just picking up on the point Laura made and Manish made earlier on, we very much want your feedback direct to us, so don't be afraid to tell us what we should be doing. So I know we spoke about work programme earlier on, but we need to get, when you're ready, another meeting in to get your instructions or recommendations. Go on then.
If it's helpful just as a form of wording, I think it would be helpful for the board to set targets and ambitions for us as well. Like, I think that specificity as much as ambition, I think,
is a much better way of putting it. So, colleagues, we have two recommendations before us. First, that the Economic Development and Skills Policy Committee approves the terms of reference for the Diverse Business Advisory Board. And second, the Economic Development and Skills Policy Committee formally thanks the Business Response Group for their dedication and work during the COVID pandemic and in co-authoring the Business Recovery Plan. Are we agreed on that? Anybody who disagrees, stick your hand up. In that case, it's unanimous. Thank you ever so much for coming, Ruth. It's much appreciated. So we next have three items relating to applications to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Can I just check, Diana, are we intending to take them together or one at a time?
If we take them one at a time, if that's okay. it's okay, I can just do a bit of a intro to all three, and then we can bring people in. So just to explain to everybody, the Shared Prosperity Fund is the UK's replacement for European funding. And we've been going through a process. That money's been devolved to the Mayoral Combined Authority, and we've been going through a process through last year and this year to kind of put our programmes together to secure that money for Sheffield. So there's 3 levels of report that you're seeing today. There is kind of policy level decisions supporting us in developing a programme and putting a bid in. That's the first report. I think I just checked my agenda. Yeah, around the visitor economy and culture. There is a very clear programme of activity that we're wanting to bid for and start to deliver around people and skills. And then there's a kind of a commissioning decision of work that you've seen before and made a policy decision on before at previous committees to enable us to enact some of the decisions that we needed to make in terms of the business. So there's kind of 3 levels of decisions. That's why I think it's easier to take them together, because some are policy decisions, some are commissioning decisions. So they're all around SPF. So if we kick off initially with the visitor economy and cultural bid, can I hand over to you, Rebecca?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Right. Hello, I'm Rebecca Maddox. I support culture within the City Council. So this is a report which is asking for your steer and your blessing, I guess, on years 2 and 3 of Shared Prosperity Fund. It reflects on the fact that we were able to have some year 1 funding, which, as Diana said, was devolved through government to Simca and then to the City Council. And that money, which was actually year 1, which was actually last year, it came fairly late in the day to the City Council and is being used as we speak for a number of brilliant projects. It helped to fund the Eurovision Community Party, which I hope many of you went to and lots of people enjoyed. It's funding the expansion of the Look Up programme, which is the amazing kind of alternate reality sort of art trail within the city. It's helping to fund something called Climbing at the Sky's Edge, which we're hoping will be an amazing project coming up in the autumn. It's helping to support some of the brand campaign work, which ties in with the discussion earlier about marketing Sheffield. And it's also going to provide a grant pot with about £180,000, which can go directly into cultural and creative organisations across the city. So that's this year. But this report is mainly thinking about what we're going to do next. So year 2, year 3, and that's going to build on both that year 1 programme, but also some of the things which have happened in the past. So in the past, we've had money through the Sheffield Culture Consortium, which was Arts Council money, for something called Cultural Destinations, and that was about having cultural events in the city to draw people to the city, but also make it brilliant for people who live here. So it's always worth remembering culture has those 2 great audiences. It's great for Sheffield people, and it's also great for bringing people to Sheffield and their economic impact. So the key elements of the year 2 and 3 programme are to have a cultural events programme, and we particularly want this to showcase the city's diversity and authenticity, to bring regional and national visitors, to increase footfall and vibrancy, and to benefit local creatives. So that's the first element. We also see an element which will continue to support city marketing. We see some of the year 1 activities may continue into a second year, depending on how they go. So perhaps some more of Look Up, or that may also be in partnership with the business sector. And then also building into this pot of money some staffing support, because as I think you all understand, we fly very light, really, and being able to build in some additional support and expertise to help deliver all this programme properly. That's very much what we're aiming for. So I think within Simca, the next chunk of funding, which is about £540,000, it's sort of got our name on it, but we do still need to apply formally for that and make sure that we meet the objectives of Shared Prosperity Fund. So we're asking your blessing really to do that next piece of work, ask for the money, hopefully get it and run with it.
Thank you. The only additional thing I'll add to that is that we are also hoping to put an application into the Place Partnerships Fund at Arts Council to match some of the Shared Prosperity Fund investment. Timing wise, that might mean that we can only match year 3. We're just working through the detail there, but we're having good conversations with the Arts Council around welcoming that application, although it's very competitive once you get in there, but we would like to put that bid into to try and make this a much bigger programme.
Thank you. I think from the conversation we had earlier on, you'd be aware that just how much the committee supports the visitor economy and culture. And on a personal level, that Look Up programme is fantastic. I'm really looking forward to the extension of that. And climbing at Sky's Edge is a brilliant idea. Absolutely fantastic. And I'm looking forward to watching it, not necessarily climbing all that way up. So
oh, is that in Manor Ward again? Oh, that's good.
Minesh.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Rebecca and Di, for, to echo Martin, I think it will be universal in this company how much we are in favour of this work going on. It's of such importance to the city, of such importance of our idea of the city. I did want to go wide and then narrow back in. I know there was a recent Star article on the future of the Coles building, which with a quote criticising too much council spending on culture on the basis that it results inevitably in coffers. I think it's worth us formally as a committee setting the record straight. We know how valuable culture is for the city. We know how valuable it is. Even setting aside driving economic growth, that culture and the creative industries bring in £2 billion a year to the South Yorkshire economy. We know there's a wealth of wider social benefits to sense of place, to our identity as people, to mental health benefits, and so much more. It defines Sheffield as a city. It's about that placemaking. It's about who we are, and I think we're all much richer because of it. And I'm sure Henry and Martin will share that sentiment as well. And I think it's a real benefit, everything this will bring. You mentioned it already, but it's particularly on increasing staffing. I think it's so important, actually. We do say how important that is. We can say whatever we want in this chamber about how important culture is, but actually what's much more valuable is the money we put into it and the effort we put into it. And I know how much you do as an individual, and I just imagine how much more we can increase by the increase in the staffing team. So incredibly valuable, incredibly important, and as important as the events delivery as well. So I don't think I've got anything specific. It's such an important piece of work, it's such an important paper, and I think we're going to see it's about how we can turn the impact of SPF funding and 1 year's worth of funding to a legacy for the city, and I think we're going to see the impact of this for years to come. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
I don't see anybody else indicating, so the recommendation before... Oh, sorry, Brian.
Hello, hi. Thank you for the report. I think everyone again will want to welcome it. One area on page 54, I think it's page 54 that I've got, which mentions about climate change assessment implications. I hope I've got the right page and right report because the pages have been separated.
I'm not sure that's the same report. There is a section within the report on page 94 about climate implications, but...
It's the next one. That's okay. It's because the pages have got separated.
Yeah.
I'll leave that question till next.
So, colleagues, the recommendation is that we agree the proposed scope of the Year 2 and 3 UK Shared Prosperity Fund Cultural Destinations bid, including submission of place pilot bid to the Arts Council. Are we all agreed? Anybody not agreed? I think that's another unanimous. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for waiting. Really good. The next item is also years 2 and 3 SPF, this time on people and skills. and Laura's joining us.
Hi, do you want to introduce yourself? Yes, I'm Laura Hayfield. I'm Head of Employment and Skills and I sit in the City Futures portfolio.
So Laura's going to present the report, the detail in the report that she's worked really hard on today. Just wanted to acknowledge this information is in the report. There was no year one for the people and skills element of Shared Prosperity Fund, and year two is very limited. It's just a small amount of money that you're able to bid for to make sure that the gap between European funding and Shared Prosperity Fund doesn't harm the third sector. So Laura will pick up with that. So this is mainly around a year three application. I'll let Laura talk you through the details.
Thank you, Di. So very pleased to bring this report to you all today. As Di says, this is about the Shared Prosperity Fund. There were three areas, as I'm sure you're aware: communities in place, business support, and this is the people and skills element. So as Di says, there's no year one activity. The report is mainly to get your approval and a policy steer on the content and the activity that we're proposing to deliver in year three mainly, but some does start from year two, as Di says, where the voluntary and community sector is at risk, and that's from October onwards, hence why we want the decision this side of the summer to commission that activity. And in total, the programme for Sheffield is 4.87 million. It's also to note that, as approved by the Finance Committee, we act as the accountable body for a significant element of the programme, which is noted down in the body of the report as Strand 1 and Strand 2, and that's to the tune of 7.65 million across the region. The final bit about it is around the commissioning of the third sector and training provision. This is a partnership that we run in Sheffield. We really value our voluntary and community sector and our training provider partners, and so a significant amount of the activity will be commissioned with those. So that's the third part of the recommendation. It's in response, the application needs to be in response to the investment plan that was submitted by Simca, and it demands a regional programme. So it's a regional programme across all of the South Yorkshire local authority areas, for which all of the component local authorities are sort of investing in different degrees in the activity, dependent on the demand and need within their area. To briefly talk about the activity that's being proposed, it comes under three strands, as I'm sure you've seen in the report. The first is very much around engagement and tailored support to people who are pretty distant from the labour market. And it's around really concentrating that activity in areas of deprivation within the city and tailoring support around people with specific barriers. So, for instance, recognising qualifications for refugees and asylum seekers, but there are many barriers to employment, which obviously I don't need to talk you all through. That activity, as in all the activity, there are sort of separate focuses and approaches for young people within it and for adults within it. The second strand is around sector-specific support. So the activity within there is really around information, advice and guidance for people who may want to get into specific sectors, and then running them through short programmes that provide the sort of basic skills needed to access specific sectors. So there'll be some general employability within there, but there's also licences and tickets that are required by certain sectors, and an element of work experience, just to sort of as like an extended interview type of approach. And the third is really to focus on those people who are in employment but want to progress within employment. So really focusing, we obviously know that we've got a bit of a low-paid, low-skilled equilibrium within Sheffield, and it's really trying to work with those people to provide key worker and careers advice, but also qualifications and skills to enable them to progress within the workforce. So as I mentioned, you know, all those strands will have a focus on young people and adults, which may have slightly different approaches, which I've gone into in the report. And all the strands, really importantly, will be promoting and supporting the gaining of green skills and jobs. So that's a massive opportunity, particularly regionally, that we want to take advantage of, but it's not for a particular group, that it's for all the groups, and it needs to be within every strand of activity we deliver.
Thank you, Laura. Just a couple of things I wanted to add is just the wider context to this. So as you're aware from last year, we've got an employment and skills partnership board that we've set up that we're working with, who are going to be commissioning the strategy with us. This SPF activity wraps around that mainstream activity. So this work focuses where there are gaps in that mainstream activity in the main, just to make that clear. So it also speaks to the investment plan. It also speaks to some of the learning that we've had from delivering European programmes for the last few years, iterating that and bringing it forward, and takes its steer from some of the policy items that were in the committee report last year. So just in terms of where the focus of this activity has come from. And I just want to thank Laura for her work on this and being so clear in the report about the outputs that are going to be achieved through this work. I think that's a really good thing for you guys as the committee to see. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm going to take the chair's prerogative and ask a couple of quick questions, and then I'll bring in Laura, and then I'll bring in Barbara. Did you hand your hand? Thank you very much for this report. I was trying to do the calculations, and it was, I think, just under 2,500 people would be benefiting from this, and as well as providing the specific training you outlined in the report, there's another word which is we could put in there, which is hope. You know, we're giving people hope when we provide them with this help. One question, how does the amount of funding that we're likely to get from SPF compare with the former funding that we had for this programme under ERDF?
Sorry. The programmes across the board that were funded by European social funding are, and it's ESF rather than ERDF, sorry. The funding is not as much as it previously was. What we've had to do is have a look at all of the ESF provision that was delivered across the city and try and identify which elements of it really work towards the investment plan as submitted by SIMCA, because only activity that is within the scope and specification of that can be included, and try and really sort of focus on the areas of work that have proved very effective, and you know, drop some of the areas of work that were possibly less effective. So there has had to be a reduction of some sort within that. It's not as much money to the area as it was.
I think the other important point here as well is that this type of activity takes time and longevity. European programmes were generally around kind of 3 to 7 years. Well, this is a one-year pot for people and skills. So it doesn't make a lot of sense as it stands alone. In terms of trying to support those people. If we work with them for a year and then let them go, some of that is wasted. So we are looking to dovetail it with some of the European work we've been doing so far, so there's some continuity there, but the employment and skills strategy will be critical in terms of setting what comes next after Shared Prosperity Fund, and potentially looking to revenue gain share to continue some of that work. So a one-year programme around people and skills is just not the way you do things.
So, could I just say as well that we have sought and been successful in some areas with additional funding, and we'll continue to do that. So we've got some funding from DWP for supported employment work for people with learning disabilities and autism. We've got continuation of the youth hubs within Sheffield, which we will wrap around this work. So that's enabled us to sort of invest slightly less of SPF in that because we can cover it with other funding. So it's the normal jigsaw of funding.
Yeah, it's kind of bittersweet. We're helping lots of people, but we could have helped even a lot more had we had the funding levels that we previously had. which is a bit sad. Anyway, I think Laura was indicating next.
Well, not only did we not give 350 million to the NHS, we actually lost a massive European Social Fund and European Regional Development funding. And that's a great loss, particularly for the most deprived in our communities. So that's the political point. I'll get down to this now. This is absolutely essential. The sort of people that are engaged by the voluntary community sector are not the ones that would engage with DWP. It's closest to the point of need. It works better for BAME communities than the DWP. What is essential is that we work with employers around diversity, because I saw in the Star sometime, might be last year or months ago, a photo of the apprentices who'd just been recruited by Sheffield Forge Masters. All of them were white and one was a woman. So I think we've got to put more pressure on employers to work with the community organisations to make sure we're getting people from diverse communities into the apprenticeships, because that's the only way we're going to, again, cultural shift and linking to the item on the REC that we have, the business. We need more diversity in particularly higher skilled apprenticeships.
Thanks, Laura. Really agree with that point. And some of that is about where you're meeting that need. So we specifically work with the VCF around kind of engagement, but we've also started doing community job fairs. And that is where we're bringing local employers into local community settings. And that is very good at getting a more diverse set of apprenticeships or, you know, people who are seeking employment into local jobs. So, you know, central services more and more aren't the right place and way to be doing some of that. So we've definitely been learning and developing our services in respect to that. So the community jobs fairs are really excellent.
Good. That's a very good point, Laura, if you could. Thank you very much. I don't see anybody else indicating. Oh, sorry, Brian. I think you're pushing an open door.
Yes.
Barbara, do beg your
Sorry,
pardon,
I
and then
thought I
Brian.
was next. Yeah. Clarification, I think, please. And I should say absolutely wholeheartedly agree with education. Having been in the education sector, I know how difficult it is to engage those who've had, for whatever reason, a negative experience in their compulsory years, and how difficult it is to then bring them forward to realise they've actually got huge talents that can be used. But, right, page 47, now as I say, it is clarification. Your number, I mean, I think I understand what you're saying, but I just want to make sure that I do understand what you're saying. So, for the youth section, 255 total participants. That is no matter what it says below that top line, that is the amount of people that you want to engage with. And basically, the other numbers are really a sort of a breakdown of sort of the issues. Would that be correct? Right, okay. What's the difference between outputs and outcomes? So, I mean, I assume it's sort of purely sort of the success rate that you're expecting.
Yeah, at the moment in ESF language, they're outputs and results, but outcomes are the same things as results, which is basically the sort of the output is the engagement. So, for instance, if it was trying to get somebody a job, the output would be taking somebody on, giving them support, helping them with CVs, improving their employability. The outcome would be the resulting job that they got into.
No, as I said, I assume that was it, but I just wanted a clarification because, come on, I used to teach maths. The numbers don't add up here anywhere.
Yes.
Right. And the other thing is the rationale at the bottom. I mean, to be quite honest, sort of, you know, if you've got extra 15,700 people, that means that there's about 84,000 people that are unengaged in employment. Could all of those actually be potentially employable?
No. So economic inactivity are those people who are not job searching, registered as unemployed with the job centre, but they do include a wide range of people that wouldn't actually be looking for work. So, for instance, people who've retired, people are fairly retired, students are economically inactive. So there is a proportion of those that do not want to work. But we've mainly split the other sort of two groups of people into people who have a financial need to engage and so will engage. But there are a group of economically inactive people who will engage in the correct circumstances. So, for instance, you know, they may have caring commitments, so they would work if the hours were flexible enough to accommodate those. And it's particularly those that group that we really want to be able to engage with. And the voluntary and community sector through the ESF engagement have proved to be really effective comparatively to other cities in terms of managing to engage with economically inactive people in Sheffield. And actually, although the numbers are risen and there's a lot of press about them rising nationally, they've risen less in Sheffield than they have in other areas as a result of that activity that's been ongoing.
So out of that 80-odd thousand, how many do you think potentially want to be in employment or could be in employment? Any idea?
I do have an idea, but not actually to hand. If I could maybe come back after that, but we absolutely. I have spreadsheets with these numbers on them, and I have looked at them, but I can't call them off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
I mean, it's like everything. It looks like the tip of the iceberg, if you know, from the participants that you've identified here, and it's such a shame. We could have extra money. Well, political, for instance, in the European Union to actually accommodate these. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think just this 1 year programme as well. You know, as soon as we've got over this one, we need to start looking at the future too.
We've got Brian and then Minesh.
Hello, and thank you, Laura and Diana, for this. And the question is to you. So it's about green jobs and how we can work better with those to unlock funds, which kind of relates to what it says on page 54, which is one of the areas for working on green jobs is to do with working, we have down here as a bullet point, Simca businesses and industry to increase the provision of low carbon skills. I think you may also be missing a trick, because what we have is we've got two areas. So the Heritage Lottery Fund and Historic England are both keen on this area and also have multi-million pounds locked away, which can be released if we got into dialogue with them on this. So, and they're extremely interested in getting green skills on the agenda. So I think, you know, if you may already be talking to them, but if you're not, then please, you know, I'll make a plea as someone who has been a heritage professional for the last 25 years, to, you know, for Sheffield City Council to have a dialogue with these two bodies and try and release some of that money that they have for skills training. They're working with other city councils, with other core councils, so Sheffield has to be in there and releasing that money. We already don't get enough from those two bodies. You know, the evidence is there that we're not drawing down what we could proportionately. So I'd like to ask you to do that.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Brian. I'll get onto that. I mean, we are, you know, the funds for Shared Prosperity Fund are around support, and then there's obviously separate types of fund that's around for training. I haven't investigated those two avenues, so I will. But we are, you know, we're supporting providers to apply for training monies for green skills at the moment. We've got two bids in currently, so it's very much top of my agenda.
Minesh?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Laura, for this. I, same as everyone else, completely agree with the rationale and making the most of the last of the funding we have to support ongoing work. I was going to make the point about what we do after this, after we, you know, face the shortfall of the loss of SPF, and I wonder if the committee might agree to sending a joint letter drafted by Diana to the Minister, setting out, you know, what we have done with ESF and then SPF, what we've delivered through skills funding, I guess where we think we need to be in terms of more funding to deliver more for the people of Sheffield, and just we can't face a shortfall after the end of these programmes, even though we're making the most of it, trying to deliver we need an injection of cash from the government, essentially. So that's a proposal to the committee as well.
Can I just build on that? I think one of the things you said, Minesh, was it'd be very interesting to see, as well as not how much we could deliver with the funding available, but how much funding we need. Yeah. Is that the point you're making? To try. Okay, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Very happy to support you in that. It might be that it could be a joint letter from the MCA as well, actually, if it's going to ministers, as they are the accountable body for a lot of this funding, so that might add some support and weight to it. And just in terms of after the SPF, we are looking at our proportion of revenue gain share. I mean, that's even less than Shared Prosperity Fund in truth, so we're going to be looking for other things as well. We're hoping in the next 18 months, whatever happens in terms of kind of the national politics, that there will be some other funding that will replace Shared Prosperity Fund that we'll be able to work on. And as Laura said, we're always tapping into different funding pots, but it is very much a funding jigsaw, and that keeps you short term and small in some of the activity, whereas actually you could do with giving both the voluntary sector and participants some long-term confidence that this support is going to be around for a while and contract in a different way. That feels like it's a way off at the moment, but certainly an aim within our sites. Maybe gain share will give us a certain element of that we need to top up, but it's certainly on our agenda. Anything the committee can do to support us in that is very welcome, and we'll keep you updated.
Thank you. I think everybody's done, which means I'm trying to find the recommendation. Bear with us for a second, guys. Oh, sorry. Crikey. So I have to read out the recommendation. This one's really long. It was all going so well. So the recommendation is that our committee note that Sheffield City Council proposes, as an accountable body for activity funded by UK SPF Strands 1 and 2 for an overall regional value of 7.65 million, in line with the approval by the Finance Subcommittee on 7th of November 2022. We'll be taking notes afterwards, so keep up. As accountable body to enter into funding agreements with SIMCA to enable the delivery of the UK SPF programme in Sheffield and South Yorkshire, as set out in the report, and that the scope of the bid is developed in line with South Yorkshire Investment Plan for SIMCA and the South Yorkshire-wide delivery model. The second recommendation is that we approve the use of 3.94 million of the UK SPF People and Skills funding and 922,000 match funding, bringing a total of 4.87 million in Sheffield, to be used for the activities described and set out in the tables in this report. There are some other notes there, but I'm going to take that as we've all read them. Does everybody agree? I'll take that as read. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then finally, we have the third element of the SPF funding, for which we have Diana again, and Ben.
Yeah, so I'm going to let Ben lead this report as well. Just to draw your attention to the fact that this is more of a commission decision based on policy decisions that you took last year. So this is enacting what you've already agreed around business support for years 2 and 3. Thanks.
Thank you, Di. In the context of the rest of the meeting, this is very much last and least, so I'll be glad to know this will be very short. Unbeknown to us in the committee system over the past 12 months, when we come to look to commission activity over £250,000, we come to a policy meeting, a policy committee. We thought it might be Finance Committee, but you have the pleasure of overseeing commissioning activity. So this report is just seeking approval to two commissioning strategies associated with two elements of the UK SPF, which the committee has already agreed to. So the first one is in relation to the low carbon SME support project and also grants to cultural and community facilities for energy efficiency activity, whereby we are looking to procure a framework of consultants who can undertake detailed analysis of buildings for both of those elements of the projects, so we can determine the current energy use and identify the best interventions to ensure that those properties are and activities are reduce their carbon impact and reduce their energy costs going forward. That expertise doesn't exist in the council. The procurement's over £250,000, so we're seeking approval for that. The second commissioning strategy is in relation to the social enterprise. Thank you, that's it. Social enterprise activity, again, where we don't have the expertise within the council and need external support. This activity has been something which has been very much at the heart of the previous European programmes, so that's why it's sitting in the UK SPF. And again, it's a procurement to get the appropriate organisation to assist us deliver that activity. Because it's over £250,000, we've come to this policy committee to sign off the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. So, on a personal level, I think helping businesses with energy efficiency and supporting social enterprise are both good ideas. So I'm going to go with Henry first and then Laura this time.
Nearly there. In terms of the social enterprise activity that's going on, it's been mentioned under the previous item that we're now in a situation where we have to do far more with far less. I'm a big believer in making the maximum we can of existing expertise. We have existing social enterprise providers in the city. Can we get an assurance that during the procurement process, their presence in the city and their current expertise and the fact that they're established is going to be given its proper weighting?
Yes, sir. My turn. So we've developed the programming and engaged with the various social enterprise providers in the city. So the procurement process, not only does the actual specification sort of relate to some of their input into what's needed going forward, but they're well aware of the procurement which will be forthcoming and they'll have the ability to put forward their proposals. So yes.
About the commission, the social enterprise part now, about the commissioning process, I think we need to be really clear that any tender has got to bring in wider benefits. So I'm thinking if we could add something about them attracting seed corn and growth funding, so that they link to organisations like the Key Fund that might provide that, rather than just doing the advice themselves. So we're getting added value would be a good idea. And also, because this is very limited, whether we can work, whoever's doing it, looking at an exit strategy and seeing what other resources might be available, because it's a very limited period. And yes, we have got providers in the city, but we need to be very specific about what we want, rather than just what the providers want. This has got to be about the need of potential and existing social enterprises.
Absolutely, and I think the work which Business Sheffield, who are leading the activity, the work they've been doing has been at pains to make sure that when we go out to procurement, we are seeking the needs of the sector within the city. So that will be very much built into the tender process, and we can certainly encourage bidders to identify other potential sources of support and funding alongside that. Whether they'll be able to do that or not, what the procurement process will determine.
Yeah, and finally, in the procurement process, can we look at added social value?
So I think within the usual procurement process now, we do ask
Yeah,
those
but
type of questions.
it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
You know, if we can really try and change the shift to look at added value that we're getting through procurement process, it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And before I bring Minesh in, just to build on something that Laura said, I mean, it's a matter of public record that Sheffield City Council sees social enterprise and therefore the support for social enterprise as a priority, and that message got through loud and clear to the MCA. So, Minesh.
Thanks, Martin. No, actually, I think you just made the point I was going to make, that, you know, it says in the papers, but I think it should be something that we're proud of, that Sheffield is specifically providing social enterprise support when the other authorities in the MCA aren't looking at it and aren't using SPS plans to do that. It is something of strategic value and strategic importance to us as a council, to us as a city. I think we've mentioned social enterprises throughout the events, to the meeting today, particularly in the Inclusive Business Board agenda item. I think we all recognise how important it is to have the views of local providers factored in, and you know we know we've been reaching out directly from the start with providers across the city to talk about what we need in commissioning this. We need to draw from the expertise in the city, and I think it's really valuable that the process set out does that. So yeah, just really encouraged by this, and as Laura says, we need to ensure the legacy going forwards as well.
Okay, I don't see anybody else indicating, so it's a nice simple recommendation on this one, that the committee approves the commissioning strategies as set out in this part of the report. Are we all agreed? Lots of nods of heads. In that case, approved unanimously. That concludes the items on our agenda. Thanks for sticking with it, councillors. The next meeting is, I believe, the 15th of September. But as we said earlier on, there may well be some briefings, which are voluntary, obviously, that you may wish to attend before then. Diana, you wanted to say something?
Laura's just texted me that 25,700 is the number of inactive people who want to work, Barbara.
So unless there's any more, thank you for attendance today, and yeah, thank you to officers. Thanks for sticking with it, Ben. I know it's not great being last up on a hot day.